Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a long time. So in today's video we're going to draw the pattern for this beautiful dress. So here's my basic bodice pattern. This line is the bust line, down here is the waistline. So what I want to do now is to cover up the waist dart. So I'm just going to cut open that bust dart so that I can have space and cover up the waist dart. In other words, I'm transferring the waist dart to the side dart. I'm not really sure the name, either side dart or bust dart, but you guys understand what I'm talking about. So after cutting open these two darts, I will just slide the waist dart and cover it up. This will increase the width of the bust dart. Then I'll add an extra piece of paper to cover up this opening at the bust dart. Now we're done with this, I'll move down to the waistline. I'll mark 0.25 inches down here. Then I'll use my ruler to connect the line from one end to the other just to reduce the curvedness there. You can equally use half an inch instead of using 0.25 inch. I just want that waistline to be straight instead of being curved. Now I'm just folding up the bust dart so that I can cut off the excess by the side. So I want to redraw this dart. I'll mark 1 inch from the bust point towards the dart. Then to connect the point to the two dart legs, I'll use a straight line to connect to the both of them. You can even go as far as using 1.5 inch. This is just to reduce the length of the dart so that it won't be too close to the bust point. Next up, I'm going to mark 3.5 inches from my bust line upwards towards the chest. I'm just doing this to cover up the bust. You can use a smaller number if you want to expose your cleavage. So how I got this 3.5 inches is I measured from my bust point down to my underbust, which I have as 3.5. So my bust point is 10.5 inches, my underbust is 14. So minusing the both of them, you get 3.5 inches. So go ahead and do the same thing for your own. And this is the easiest way to get your upper bust measurement. Now I'll just mark 3.5 across, then I'll use my ruler to draw a straight line connecting all the points together. But before I do that, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches upwards from the armhole. I'm doing this because I don't really want this chest to be very straight, to be straight as the one in the picture. But you can leave yours this straight, but I don't want mine to be like that. Now go ahead and measure across your chest line. What I have for mine is 14.5 and half of it is 7.25, which is exactly what I have here on the chest line. So I will just go ahead and cut out everything out. There's one more thing I forgot to do. I needed to determine the strap. So I just place everything back and I'm drawing a straight line upwards. This is just for me to know the length of the strap that I'm going to use. Okay, so later on I'm going to measure it and also do the same thing for the back pattern. Here is what the front pattern look like. So on second thought, I want to remove 0.5 inch from that 1.5 inch I added here before. So that's what I'm doing. I will just draw a new straight line. I felt like I added too much. Okay, I'll cut the excess out now. For this dress, I don't want to wear a bra with it, so here's what I'm going to do. I have here with me the exact replica of the basic bodice pattern I just used. So in no time you understand what I'm trying to do, but first of all I'm going to cover up this bust dart and I'll open one at the shoulder. This line I just drew now, you can draw it to touch the middle of the shoulder or at the tip, anywhere you want, but this is where I want mine to be. Now I've transferred the bust dart to the shoulder. So next thing I'm going to do is to mark my underbust. My underbust is 3.5 from my bust point, which is what I'm marking right now. After that, I'll draw a dotted line across this point for my underbust line. Here on the underbust line, I'm going to mark quarter of my underbust measurement, which I have as 8. That's a total of 32 inches. Then the dart width, I'm going to mark the dart width on that line. So what I have here there is about 1 inch. So I'm going to mark it on the underbust line as well. Then I'll have a leftover of about 1 inch. I'll keep this remaining 1 inch in mind. Then I'll quickly grab my back pattern and do the same thing there. So now I'm marking the points to determine the underbust line on the back pattern. Then I'll just use a dotted line to mark across it. After that, I'll just mark the 8 inches, which is quarter of my underbust measurement. Then I'll measure the dart width on that line, and I'll replace it on that line as well. So my leftover will be, my leftover is about half an inch, so which I'll add to the one for the front, and I'll have 1.5 inch. Back on the front pattern, the 1.5 inch leftover I have, I just mark 0.5 inch on the right dart leg and 1 inch on the left dart leg. Then I'll connect these 2 points downwards to the waistline with a straight line. Then I'll also connect it upwards to the bust point with a curved line. Still on the underbust line, I want to tighten it up a bit, just a little bit. So on the side seam on the underbust line, I'll mark 0.25 inch. Then I will just use the ruler to connect the point to the armhole and down to the waistline. Next up is the chest line. I'll quickly grab the first pattern that I drafted. Okay, so I'll just place it here and I will trace this chest line so that I'll have the exact same thing for the both of them. To do this, I use the pin to hold these 2 patterns in place on their bust point. This will make it easier for me to rotate the pattern on the top so that I can easily trace the chest line on the one below. As you can see here, the armhole for the 2 patterns are not the same. This is because the pattern on top, I removed 0.5 inch from the armhole. So I'm just going to make sure that they're the same. So having done that, I'm going to mark 0.5 inch on both sides of this dart, just on that line. Then I'll connect the 2 points down to the bust point using a curved line. These 2 half an inch that I just marked now, which is a total of 1 inch, go back to the first pattern, mark it at the armhole side and cut it out. I didn't do this here, which is something I should have done because I wanted the width of the chest area for the both patterns to be the same. So go ahead and do it for your own. I had to make this correction while I was sewing this dress. This second pattern that I just finished drafting on is where I will attach the breast cup, and the first pattern will be at the front while the second pattern will be behind it. So that is the end for our front pattern. Let's move on to the back pattern. If you look at the armhole, you see that I brought down this armhole down a bit by 0.75 inch. I did the same thing for the front pattern, even though I didn't show when I was doing it. I want to find the midpoint of the shoulder down to the armhole line, so I will mark the point here, then I'll draw a straight line across it. Back on the armhole line, I'll measure from the center back to the tip of this dart. Whatever I have, I'll mark it on this dotted line. Then I'll go ahead and redraw this dart from this new point down to the waistline. Why I did this is because I wanted that area to be tightened up a bit. I always do this for all my patterns. Here at the center back on the waistline, I mark 0.75 inch. I'm going to connect this point upwards to that dotted line. Why I did this is because our back is not completely straight and I'm going to use a zipper here, so I need it to rest here comfortably. This 0.75 inch that I just removed from the center back, I'm replacing it back at the side seam. Back at the armhole line, I'm going to mark downwards 1.25 inch. I'll connect this point to the armhole. Then before I do that, I'll just fold up this dart and draw my straight line, or more like a curved line. After that, I'll just go ahead and cut everything out. Before I cut everything out, I'm going to go back and draw a line from the shoulder down to that armhole, just so that I can have an idea of where the strap is going to be. So we are done with the back pattern, and here are the pattern pieces for the back. So this strap line that I just drew, I'm going to measure it so that I can have an idea of the length of the strap that I'll need. Now I'm labeling where the zipper will be. Always label your patterns just so that you don't get confused when you're cutting it on the fabric. So we are done with the top pattern of the dress, and here are all the pattern pieces. So the next one is to move down to the skirt pattern. Here is my skirt pattern. I have 6 inches as the length of the dart, and then from my waist down to the hip line is 9 inches. This pattern is not as long as I want the dress to be, but I'm going to use it that way. So on the waistline at the center back, I'm going to mark 0.75 inch, which is the same thing I did for the back pattern of the top. And from that point, I'm going to mark downward 6 inches and then use my ruler to connect these 2 points together. And just like I did earlier for the top, I'm going to replace this 0.75 inch back at the side seam, and then I will redraw this line and then erase the one that I don't need. So I'll quickly grab my top pattern and I'll place it on the skirt. As you can see, they're both matches, so there isn't really any issue in this area. Alright, from my waistline, I'm going to mark my knee length, which I have as 25 inches, and is actually longer than this pattern. So just minus 4 inches from the knee length, which mine is 21 inch. Then across that, I'll mark 1.5 inch. Then I'm just connecting it upwards to my hip line. Now I'll just cut everything out. So this is for the back. I'll now move on to the front. So the same thing I did above the knee for the back pattern, I'm doing it here now. So this is the point. I already marked the 1.5 inch. I'll just go ahead and connect the point upwards to my hip line. If you look very well, this front pattern is actually unfold. Okay, so as soon as I'm done with this, I will just unfold it. So here are the front pattern. I don't really need this waist dart for the front, so I'm just going to measure it so that I can remove it at the side seam. So I just marked it here and I'll just connect the line downwards to my hip line. I'm going to quickly erase off these two darts so that we don't get confused. From the waistline downwards, I'll mark 6.5 inches. Just keep that point in mind. Moving on downwards to the pattern, I'll mark the midpoint. Then from that point, I'll also find the midpoint here. So I'm just going to use this new point as a guide. So I'll need to connect these 2 points together. Down at the pattern, I didn't actually connect this line at that midpoint I marked earlier. I moved away 1.5 inches, so which is why you can still see that midpoint I marked there earlier. Now on the other side of the skirt, I'm also going to draw another curved line from there. But before I do that, I'm going to mark the point where I want the overlapping to stop, which is here. I'll go ahead and draw the curved line for this side. So from the waist down to the beginning of this curved line is 4 inches. Then from this point I want the overlap to stop, I marked 1 inch down. And then I connected these new points downwards. Just go ahead and do yours however you like. Next, I'm going to use a different pattern paper to trace out one of these overlap pattern. And then this paper here will be for the second overlap pattern. Now here is what I have after tracing it out on a different paper. Okay, so I'm just going to clean off that line so that I'll be left with the second overlap pattern. For the pleat on this dress, I'm going to draw 3 different slanted straight lines. For each of the line, I'll measure 1.75 inch before the next line. Next, I'm going to cut each of these lines open so that I can spread them apart. So here I'm making use of the slash and spread method. Now I'll grab another pattern paper and place under these openings. So what I'm going to add to each of these openings is 2.5 inches. Now I'm just marking it, and then I'll just go ahead and use my sellotape to hold the piece together. I'll do the same thing for the other 2 openings as well. After that, I'm going to fold the pleat, and I'm going to fold it to face up, all of them. So let's cut everything out, and we are almost at the end of this tutorial. Alright, here are the 2 overlapping pieces, and they're already looking beautiful. So when I'm cutting this pattern on the fabric, I'm going to increase the length to the length that I want. So guys, we've come to the end of this tutorial. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and in my next video we're going to sew this dress. Bye.